My name is Claire, and I was the one nobody wanted at their wedding. I never thought it would come to this. Growing up, I was always the black sheep in the family, but I never imagined that it would push me to this point, standing outside the doors of my siblings' weddings, the events I was supposed to be a part of, banned from all of them, and made to feel like I wasn't worthy of even a seat at the table. I wasn't perfect. I had my flaws, but didn't we all? Yet somehow, it felt like I was always the one who was blamed for everything that went wrong in the family. I was the one who couldn't do enough, who couldn't be enough. It started small, the little things. At first, it was the subtle comments from my older sister, Mia, when I couldn't afford to contribute as much as she expected me to for family vacations, or the way my brother Tom would make cutting remarks about my career choices, even though I was doing my best to build a future on my own terms. But the real breaking point came when Mia and Tom started planning their weddings back to back, and suddenly, I wasn't invited to either. At first, I thought it was just a misunderstanding, some kind of mistake. I mean, they were my family, and weddings were meant to be a time of celebration, right? But then I found out it wasn't an oversight. It was intentional. Mia called me up one evening, her voice cool and dismissive. "Claire," she said, "we've decided not to invite you to the wedding. It's just complicated. I think it's better this way." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What do you mean? Mia, I'm your sister." My voice cracked, and for a moment, I was speechless. "It's just, you're always so negative, Claire. You've caused too much drama in the family, and we just can't have that at the wedding," she added. I was stunned. I had always tried to support her, to be there for her, but apparently, it wasn't enough. And then came Tom's wedding. I had hoped, foolishly, that I would at least be included. But no. He sent me a message on Facebook, blunt and cold. "I'm sorry, but you're not invited. We just think it's best for everyone if you stay out of the picture." It was the same excuse. I was too much of a drama queen, too difficult, too complicated. I sat there, staring at my phone, my heart sinking. I had always tried to be there for them, to support them in whatever way I could. But this? This was something different. I never imagined that my own siblings would make me feel like I was unworthy of their love and support. And the worst part? It wasn't just about not being invited to their weddings. It was the fact that they had already made up their minds. They had labeled me as someone who wasn't good enough to be a part of their most important moments. It was painful. Deeply painful, and it made me realize something I had been too blind to see before. I had been running after their approval for far too long, and no matter what I did, it was never enough. That was the moment I decided something had to change. No longer would I chase after their approval. No longer would I let them dictate my worth. It was time for me to take control of my own life, to stop looking for acceptance from people who didn't value me, to stop letting them decide how I should live. It was time for me to start saying no. It wasn't easy, that first step. Walking away from the weddings felt like a heavy weight, but I knew I had to do it. The truth was, I had spent my entire life trying to prove myself to my siblings and my parents. I always thought that if I just worked harder, gave more, made fewer mistakes, maybe then they would see me for who I truly was. A person with her own dreams, ambitions, and worth. But the truth kept slapping me in the face. No matter how hard I tried, I was always the one left out. Always the one who didn't fit in with their perfect lives. Always the one who couldn't be enough. That's when I realized something. I wasn't the problem. They were. I started distancing myself from everything that had caused me pain. I stopped trying to please them. I stopped reaching out. And for the first time in my life, I started focusing on me. It wasn't easy, though. At first, it felt like a vacuum, like I was losing everything I knew. I couldn't help but wonder if they were right about me, if I was indeed a failure. I would lie in bed at night and replay the words Mia and Tom had said over and over in my mind. "You're too difficult. You've caused too much drama." But then something inside me clicked. I had been chasing approval my entire life, Approval from my parents, approval from my siblings, approval from anyone who would offer it, and I had never once stopped to ask myself what I wanted. I realized that I had been allowing them to define me, to define my worth, for far too long. What if I stopped seeking validation from them? What if I built a life where I didn't need them to tell me I was good enough? I started small. I went back to something I had always loved but had pushed aside: painting. As a child, I used to spend hours painting landscapes and portraits, but I had stopped once I'd gotten older. The pressure of life, family, and work had swallowed it all up. But now, with a new sense of clarity, I picked up a paintbrush again. The first few paintings were messy, full of color but lacking direction. But slowly, as I allowed myself to dive into this hobby, something began to change inside me. I wasn't just painting for the sake of being good or pleasing anyone. I was painting for me. And for the first time in years, I felt free. I also started working on my career. I had always been the one who put my job on the back burner while I took care of everyone else, but now I was investing in myself. I took on projects I was passionate about, said yes to opportunities that aligned with my values, and most importantly, I stopped allowing anyone to diminish my worth. I had a purpose beyond their expectations. But as I moved forward, there was one thing I hadn't prepared myself for. Despite all my personal growth, the hurt from my siblings still lingered. They didn't call. They didn't check in. I didn't hear a word from them, not even to ask how I was doing after their weddings. And that stung. I tried to brush it off, but one evening I found myself scrolling through old photos of the family, the weddings, the birthdays, the holidays where I was always present, always part of the picture. I realized how much I missed being close to them. I missed the idea of having a family who accepted me, flaws and all. But then, as I stared at the photos, I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg for that acceptance anymore. If they couldn't see my worth, if they couldn't value me for who I was, then I didn't need them in my life. I reached a point where I knew my happiness and self-worth no longer depended on them. It was up to me to decide who I wanted to be, not them. A few weeks later, I received a message from Tom. It was a simple text, and I hadn't expected it at all. "Claire, I think we need to talk. I was wrong about everything." My heart raced. Part of me wanted to respond right away, but I held back. I needed to process this. I wasn't sure what he was going to say, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't eager to run back to him for validation. I had grown too much in these past weeks to let myself fall back into those patterns. But I couldn't deny that a part of me still wanted to know what he had to say. What had made him reach out now? Was it too late for reconciliation? Or had I finally gotten the strength to say no, even when they came back into my life? I stared at Tom's message for a while. There was a part of me that wanted to pick up the phone and call him right away, to ask him why he was reaching out after all these years, after everything. But another part of me hesitated. What if I went back to the way things were? What if I allowed them to slip back into their old ways of controlling and belittling me? I knew I couldn't let that happen. After much internal debate, I decided to reply, but this time, on my terms. I took a deep breath and typed, "I'm willing to listen, Tom, but I need to be clear. I won't tolerate being treated as if I don't matter anymore. If this is going to be a conversation about how wrong I was and how I need to apologize, then it's not worth having. But if you're willing to hear me out, then let's talk." I hit send and put my phone down, letting out a long sigh. There, I had said it. I had drawn the line, something I had been avoiding for so long. Minutes felt like hours as I waited for a response. When my phone buzzed again, I picked it up quickly. "Claire, you're right. I've been selfish. I don't know when it happened, but I stopped seeing you for who you are. You're my sister, and I should have treated you better. I'm sorry. I can't change the past, but I want to start fresh." I sat there in silence, reading his words over and over again. Start fresh. That was exactly what I had been doing for myself, starting fresh. No longer allowing the past to define me, no longer letting their opinions of me be the measure of my worth. But could I really start fresh with him? With all of them? I thought about it for a moment. Yes, we were family. And maybe, just maybe, people could change. But I wasn't about to let the same patterns emerge. This time, I was in control. I took a deep breath before typing my response. I'm glad to hear that, Tom. I think we both need time to process things, but I'm open to talking. But just so we're clear, this isn't about going back to the way things were. It's about moving forward as equals, not with me constantly in the background. I sent the message and felt a sense of relief wash over me. I wasn't expecting a complete resolution right away, but I had said my piece, and I had done it in a way that felt true to who I was now. No more apologies for existing, no more shrinking myself to make room for everyone else. The conversation after that was slow but steady. We spoke a few more times, and each time I could feel him trying to understand. He apologized again, this time more genuinely. We talked about the years of silence, the hurt I had been carrying, and the frustration that had built up in me over time. I didn't hold back. I told him everything I had been holding in all these years, not out of anger, but because I needed him to understand. I needed him to hear me. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it felt like a beginning where I no longer had to hide my feelings or apologize for wanting to be treated with respect. But as we moved forward, I started to realize that this was just one part of the journey. It wasn't just about Tom. It wasn't just about my siblings. It was about me, reclaiming my life, my happiness, and my peace. I didn't need their validation anymore. The work I was doing on myself, the steps I was taking toward building a life that was truly mine, was enough. I realized that while family was important, I couldn't keep waiting for them to define me. I couldn't live my life on their terms anymore. I was learning to say no. I was learning to say no to their expectations, no to their manipulations, and most importantly, no to allowing them to make me feel small. As I stood in front of the mirror one evening, looking at myself with a sense of pride, I couldn't help but smile. I had done it. I had started living for me. And whatever happened next, I knew I was ready for it. As the days went by, I started to feel more grounded in my own life. I focused on the things that truly mattered: my work, my personal goals, and most importantly, my children. They were my greatest source of motivation, and I was determined to show them what it meant to live authentically, to show them that they didn't need anyone's approval to be enough. However, despite the progress I was making, there was still an underlying tension with my siblings. Tom and I had made some strides, but Mia still hadn't reached out, and as time passed, I realized that it wasn't just about them anymore. It was about me having the strength to face these challenges on my own terms. I spent more time thinking about my relationship with Mia. I didn't expect things to change overnight, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still holding on to something, some version of me that she thought I should be. What if she never understood? What if I was always going to be the one who didn't fit into her perfect image of a sister? I decided it was time to have that conversation with her. I had nothing to lose. The old patterns needed to be broken once and for all, and if I was going to move forward, I had to make sure that I wasn't living in the shadow of anyone else's expectations. I reached out to Mia, cautiously at first. I wasn't sure how she would respond, but I knew I had to be honest with her. It was now or never. A few days later, we finally met at a cafe. She looked the same, always impeccably put together, always with that air of confidence. But there was something different in her eyes when she looked at me this time. Maybe she could see the change in me, or maybe she was just finally ready to listen. I couldn't say for sure, but I was going to give her the opportunity to hear me out. We sat down, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I had to apologize for who I was. I took a deep breath and spoke from my heart. "Mia," I started, my voice steady but honest. "I've spent so many years trying to make you proud, trying to fit into your idea of what a sister should be. I've done everything I could to be the person you wanted me to be. But I can't do that anymore. I need you to see me for who I am, not who you think I should be." Her eyes softened, and for the first time in years, I felt like she wasn't just looking at me with judgment, but with curiosity. Maybe she had been waiting for me to say this all along. I know I've made mistakes, I continued, but I've also learned so much. I've learned that I don't need your approval to be happy, to be successful, or to be loved. I've been living in the shadow of our family's expectations, but I'm done with that. I want us to have a real relationship, one that's built on respect, not obligation. There was a long pause. Mia looked at me, her fingers tapping lightly on the table. I couldn't tell if she was processing what I was saying or if she was just too shocked by the honesty in my words. Finally, she spoke. "I don't know what to say," Mia said softly. "I've always wanted what's best for you, Claire. But I guess I never realized how much pressure I was putting on you. I never understood how hard it must have been for you to live up to, I don't know, the standard I set in my mind." I nodded, letting her words sink in. "I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but it still happened. And I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not. I need you to see me as I am, not as the person you think I should be." She was quiet for a moment, then let out a deep sigh. "I'm sorry, Claire. I truly am. I didn't see it. But I do now. I want to make things right." I didn't expect an immediate change, but hearing her say that felt like a small victory. For the first time in a long time, I realized that maybe we could rebuild our relationship, but it had to be on my terms. I couldn't go back to the old patterns of constantly trying to win her approval. I had to let go of that need. We spent the next hour talking about everything and nothing. We spoke about the past, the present, and the future. There were still awkward moments, but they felt less strained than before. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And that was enough. When I left the cafe, I felt lighter. I wasn't sure what would come next with Mia, but I had said what needed to be said. I had set a boundary that was mine, and that was something I had never done before. As I walked to my car, I realized that this wasn't just about my relationship with Mia. It was about me taking control of my life, finally saying no to the toxic expectations I had allowed to define me for so long. The weeks that followed weren't without their challenges. Rebuilding my relationship with Mia was slow, but I could see that she was trying. We both were. There were moments when I doubted myself, moments when the old insecurities crept back in. I wondered if I was doing the right thing, if walking away from my siblings' expectations was the right choice. But then I would remember how far I had come, how much I had grown. The true breakthrough came when I had to make a decision that had been weighing on me for months. My parents reached out. They wanted to discuss family matters, but I already knew what that meant. It was the same conversation I had been avoiding. They had always been the ones who dictated how I should live, and now they were trying to pull me back into their fold. I hesitated for a moment, knowing that this was the ultimate test of everything I had worked for, the strength to stand firm in my newfound independence. I met with them, and as soon as I sat down, I could feel the familiar pressure. My mom's eyes filled with expectation, my dad, trying to be the authority he always had been. But this time, it was different. This time, I wasn't going to apologize for my life. "Claire," my mom started, her voice almost pleading, "we just don't understand why you've distanced yourself from us. You know we only want what's best for you. We're your family." I took a deep breath, letting her words wash over me, but not allowing them to affect me the way they used to. I had spent so long living in their shadow, constantly trying to be the person they wanted me to be. But I was no longer that person. I was me. "I understand that, Mom," I said, my voice steady. "But you have to understand something. I'm not living for you anymore. I've spent my whole life trying to make you proud, but I can't keep sacrificing myself for something that isn't even what I want. I want to live for me now." My father looked at me, his brow furrowing. "What are you saying, Claire? Are you telling us you're going to cut us out of your life?" I shook my head, looking at both of them. "I'm not cutting you out, but I need you to see me. Not as the person you think I should be, but as who I truly am. If you can't do that, then I don't know where we go from here." There was silence for a long moment. I could see the shock on their faces. This wasn't what they had expected. They thought I would always be the daughter who obeyed, who complied, who fit into their plans, but not anymore. Finally, my dad spoke, his voice softer than I had ever heard it. "We've always pushed you, Claire, because we thought we were helping you. Maybe we were wrong. Maybe we've never really seen you for who you are." His words were unexpected. But even though I wanted to believe them, I knew better than to expect everything to magically change overnight. It was progress, but it wasn't enough. "I don't need your approval anymore, Dad," I said quietly. "I just need you to accept me for who I am. And if you can't, then I need to protect myself. I can't keep living for anyone else." It wasn't an ultimatum, it was a declaration of my worth. I was no longer asking for permission, I was taking control of my life. As I left their house that day, I felt something inside me that I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because everything had been resolved, but because I had taken back my power. I had said no, and for the first time in my life, that felt like enough. Over the next few months, things between my family and me were still complicated. My relationship with Mia improved slowly, and Tom kept reaching out, trying to rebuild what we had lost. But it was different now. I didn't need them to define me. I had learned to define myself. I realized that family didn't have to be perfect. But I did. I didn't have to keep living in the shadow of their expectations. I was worthy just as I was, and as I looked at my children, I knew I was doing the right thing. I wasn't just teaching them how to live, I was teaching them how to be strong, how to say no when it was needed, how to value themselves no matter what anyone else said. I didn't need their approval anymore, and that was the most powerful thing I had ever realized.